Welcome back to the Pushing Through Loss podcast, where we share stories, honor resilience, and embrace strength. I am Kalila Green Siciliano, and it is my honor to begin the journey with you. I am so honored to have this person here with me today. Monique, we just met, and I feel like I've known you for years. As we said before we started recording, you totally speak my language, and it is really an honor to have you on. So feel free to introduce yourself.
First, I am honored to be here with you and dive into these topics that are so deep for some of us. And I hope that your audience gets something out of what we're going to share here today. But my name's Monique Derouen, and I work with the trauma body and somatics. I teach people how to self heal from pain points that they've been living with for a long time. So thank you for having me.
My pleasure. It's so important to really delve into the pain of things. When we first started talking right before we recorded, we both agreed that when bad things happen, when trauma happens, sometimes it's okay to just sit in it and to feel it. And you really do want to be able to feel those emotions. Tell me about, I guess, how you got into the understanding of being able to allow others to sit and feel it through your own healing journey.
Yeah, it's a great question. From a very young age, with no fault of anyone's, just how it was, my parents told me, go cry in your room. Don't make that noise in here. If I got into it with one of my little brothers, you should be ashamed. Don't hit your brother. Don't fight. I know their intention was pure. I know that they loved us. It's nothing to do with that. But the way that I interpreted it was what I feel doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And so from a very young age, I had this belief that what I feel doesn't matter.
Hmm.
So if I wanted to tap dance in the house and they didn't want me to mess up the floors, what I needed didn't matter, right? If I
Right.
wanted to, whatever it was.
And as a
So
kid,
fast
that feels like a big thing. As an adult, you look at it and you're like, no,
forward,
that rule totally makes sense. But you
right?
create this story in your head of, oh my gosh, what I want to do makes no difference in the world to somebody that I love.
Yeah, I want ice cream for dinner. No, you can't have that, And so,
Right.
like, it's just an awareness that I have now. So, fast forward a few years, when you're in high school and the first boy breaks your heart, or one of the girls are mean to you, and you're going home and you're crying, but you've been told to go to your room and cry your whole life. So,
Right.
you don't tell your parents, you don't tell your family, you don't tell anyone, you hide, and you start to push these things down into your body. And over time, I call it a storage locker. Your meat tissue, your storage locker becomes full. And the emotions that are unprocessed in your body create illness and disease,
Yep.
create pain points, right? So I was suffering with years of chronic pain. I was on 9 medications. I had had a dozen surgeries. Nobody could still figure out what's wrong with me.
Wow.
Okay. And I was young. I was in my late 20s, early 30s. This had been going on for years. And I finally changed something. I finally started looking for another way. I started going through alternative medicine and found out about mind body connection and somatics and the trauma body and the emotional body. And of course, dove into all that and had all this great knowledge, but didn't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
So, like, I talked to a lot of people and they're like, yeah, I've read the emotion code. I know about the secret. I have, studied David Levine and Peter Levine and, all these other great Garba Mate and all these brilliant minds, but they're like, well, how do you do it? What do you do with
Right.
it? So I went off on a journey and learned to embody and integrate how to change my trauma body. And when I started doing that, I started feeling lighter. And I started talking to other people about it, and they had an awareness, they understood. And so I began working with people doing the same thing. So ideally, that's how it moved, was through my own pain journey and getting to the point where I finally figured this out.
Hmm. I love how when you describe your childhood, it does sound like a normal childhood. It doesn't sound like there's any extra trauma. It doesn't sound like there's anything that your parents did where it like stands out as a red flag. And yet there's still that trauma of pain. There's still that suppression of emotion. And I think that's really key to remember is that all of this comes from totally normal things. All of this comes from the stories that we create in our head and what exactly you experience and how you experience it. It doesn't need to come from some weird, abnormal, all of a sudden you've realized like, "Oh my gosh, I was tortured as a child." No, it's a completely normal thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize
Mhm.
that big T trauma, everyone has endured some sort of trauma.
Right.
And trauma is not the act. It's not the house burning down. It's not the divorce. It's not the parents dying or the grandparents dying or the brother doing something. Like it's actually being left alone without the proper tools and resources to feel the emotions that are running through your body.
Mhm.
So imagine being a child, young, who does not have a prefrontal cortex, who cannot logically think in verbiage and words and vocabulary, but we all feel,
Mhm.
right? And then we're feeling these things and we're told we're not supposed to feel that way, or someone tells us not to make the noise or not to cry or, don't act up in this building or whatever it is, right?
Right.
From a very young age, we're strapped into car seats, we're strapped into high chairs, we're told when to eat, when to drink, when to sleep. At school, we're told when to go to the bathroom, when to move our bodies, when to get our wiggles out, right? So we've been taught how to behave.
Right.
So it goes against everything to just let these raw, unfiltered emotions run through your body, and it feels uncomfortable
Totally.
if you are not used to regulating your emotions or you've turned them off. And so to just feel them, it feels like a train wreck. It feels like a tornado. I
Right.
just feel like a tsunami. Um, and that's really an interesting thing to embody and
Mhm.
understand.
Yeah, and I think it's something like you said that it all comes from all the normal things that happen through childhood. Um, Tell me, because you had mentioned before we started recording that last year you lost both of your parents, and that's I mean, thank God my parents are alive. I can't even imagine losing one, let alone losing two within a year.
Yeah.
Um, but were you on this journey before that happened, and so it helped you through that aspect of the trauma?
Yeah. So I have two stories I'll back up a little bit about. And so in 2013 and 14, within 6 months of each other, we lost my husband's father and my father, my
Wow.
biological father. So 10 years ago, we went through this as well. In six
Mhm.
months, we lost both of them. And there was a very clear understanding of life here is very temporary
Mhm.
and we've got to live our lives. We've got to figure this out. So I was coming off of the end of that chronic pain journey about that time. And I just made a commitment to myself. I was like, I am going to figure this out and I am going to live different. And I am not going to die with this potential and joy and excitement and things in my life. Like, I'm just not going to die without living it. So we eventually pack up. We move to Colorado. We live here. We're living life, loving it. And I get a phone call, and my mother is on life support. And so I fly into the edge of the border of Mexico, right? And go decide when the time is going to be that we take her off life support.
Wow.
And so that was a really hard thing to do. I was very deep into my personal journey. I had lots of understanding about the trauma body. So this last go round was much different than the first,
Mhm.
for sure. I did have support, I did have understanding within myself as well as my community. Um, and then 6 months later, while my stepfather is visiting us here for the first time since we moved here, he dies here in Colorado.
Wow.
And so it was really shocking,
Mhm.
And I am grateful for the tools that I have. I am grateful that I have the um, capacity to do this, that I was the one that was with both of them when it happened, um, and that um, I was able to maneuver through it with a different insight than what I've had in the past. And I grieved.
Mhm.
I cried and I felt it and I was sad and I was disappointed. That all these things, these dreams, these ideals that we had about our future weren't going to come. And it was such a honor to be able to hold space for them to pass.
Mhm. I think that that actually goes hand in hand, that holding space to allow for them to pass peacefully, but also holding space for yourself to be able to grieve because it's the grief of not only losing them, but like you said, the grief of losing the ideals, losing the dreams that you had. It's the same thing in pregnancy loss, where I remember my therapist, because he comes from a history that his wife had a stillbirth, he went through that transformation of they had this whole life created that their child was going to be a part of, and that's taken away in an instant. And so he's not only grieving the loss of his child, but he's grieving the loss of this ideal that he had of the next 30, 40, 50 years that could have been a happy place to be living. So I think that's a
Yeah,
really beautiful point to say it's not just the person, but it's all of the things that come with it and all of those dreams that moving forward, you're now stuck with saying, okay, now what?
right. Well, and to that point, right? So I am flying back to Louisiana every month, emptying out my mother's belongings with my stepfather before he dies and getting the property together, right? Because everything was in her name. So I'm having to help him do everything, which is fine. I'm happy to be there. And then when he dies, now I'm like, okay, now I got to go do the same thing with his stuff, right?
Mhm,
And there was a moment where the entire house was emptied. I purchased my childhood home from my siblings, and I'm standing at the door and I'm going to shut it, and I pause and it hits me, and it's like, whoa, they're never going to sit on this couch again.
mhm,
My grandkids will never come in this and have Christmas with my parents. My
mhm,
my kids who are adults now will not come back to this house and have memories with their grandparents. And there was this, like, I just stood there and I recorded it because I wanted to see my nervous system change, because that's me. I geek out on the nervous system. And it was about 85 seconds. I mean, I just trembled and cried and bawled my eyes out. And then all of a sudden, you could see it just slowly softened.
mhm,
And I settled in.
mhm.
And we've heard that emotion lasts 90 seconds.
Yep.
So every time you rethink it, you reactivate it, but every thought generates an emotion. And so I have measured data that that's true.
Mhm,
And I've done it multiple times now, because when I feel things, I share it with people. I'm very
mhm,
honest about it. I let my clients know, I let the world know, had a really rough day. It's okay to feel where you are. This is my experience of this today. And I'm grateful that I have the awareness and the understanding and these tools now to do this.
mhm.
Again, if I suppress it, it just goes back into my body. It has to go somewhere. It's
Right.
energy and motion. It's moving,
Yep.
right? And I refuse to wake up with migraines again. I refuse to wake up with gut issues. I refuse to wake up sick because I didn't allow myself to feel something that was uncomfortable in the moment. So I cry in Target. I cry while I'm driving. Like, if I'm feeling something, there is no, like, if my face does not filter, I don't hold it back. I'm just like, I'm just gonna take these 2 minutes and feel what I'm feeling and let it move through. And shocking, in 2 minutes, I'm on a completely different brainwave.
Mhm.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's
And
important to recognize that there was a moment this past weekend where I had this epiphany and I stated it out loud. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, now that it's out there, it's not stuck in here anymore. And even just the verbalization of something and the statement of saying, I am feeling X, whatever that is. I am feeling anger. I am feeling sadness. I am feeling that emotion that I know that if I don't express it is going to get suppressed and stuck in there. It helps so much.
100%, 100%. I mean, look at EFT and TFT, right? So I've been certified in that for years, and that's one of the things that we do. We tap on meridian points of the body. We make contact with our tissue, and then we say, even though my mind thinks, even though my body feels. And whatever you want to say. If you want to say, I love myself anyways, I am here now. I know that I'm moving through this. Whatever finishes the sentence for you as the individual, and you're taking the brainwave and you're changing it. You're
Mhm.
not invalidating, you're feeling it, you're allowing it. And I think that that's a lot of the confusion that comes up when we talk about feeling emotions. People have this big, scary picture of what that looks like.
Mhm.
But the reality is, it's really gentle and it can move through. And you're not invalidating things, you're not lying about stuff, you're not not giving the attention to the grief or the loss. You're
Right.
actually acknowledging it and then saying, okay, body, now what?
Right.
Right?
And I think there's also a difference in the language where if you can say, because I always teach this to my kids, instead of saying, I am, and you state the emotion, stop claiming it for yourself. I am feeling has such a different power over your brain and over your energy to say, I am feeling angry instead of I am angry. Because the more you can say, I am angry, the more your body then internalizes it and says, you're an angry person. And that's it. As opposed to saying, this is the feeling and the feeling can pass. And then I can feel happiness and I can feel gratitude and I can feel the emotions that are so called easier to process.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. We're not our thoughts. We're not our feelings.
Right.
We're not our past. We're not our memories. We're not our emotions. We're not even this physical meat suit that we're hanging out in.
Right. We're
You know,
energy.
like we are a soul essence being in this body
Right.
who came here for experience. And we're experiencing it. Then we're like, no, 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 I don't want to experience that. Shut it
Right.
down.
Right.
Right. So, that's my one thing. Give yourself permission to feel what you feel. I know it's scary. I know it's unfamiliar. I know we have tons of thoughts about it. I remember being there, and it might not be true. It might not be factual,
Right.
right? So just play with that a little bit and see, am I willing to feel what sadness feels like, what joy feels like? I didn't even know there were so many emotions. I was like shook,
Hmm.
right? So like I ordered this emotion wheel and I'm like, oh, there's all these emotions. I knew like happy, sad, mad, kind
Right.
of
The
it.
basic ones that are in like, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. That's,
Yeah, exactly. Great song, right?
yeah.
Um, but that's kind of all of it.
Right.
I didn't know that content was an emotion or remorseful was an emotion. Like I didn't know that.
Hmm.
So I educated myself on those things and just kind of dove into what do they all mean and, you know, is it safe to feel these things?
Right. It's so funny because I remember as a kid when we sang the Happy and You Know It song, each of those emotions wasn't the clap your hands. It was if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're angry and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're
Mhm.
sad and you know it, cry boo hoo. And it felt like it put sort of a feeling to expressing it. Whereas when my kids were little, and I still sang the song that way, but when my kids were little and I heard other people singing it, I was like, did I learn it incorrectly? Everybody says, if you're happy, you know it, clap your hands. If you're angry and you know it, clap your hands. And it's all clap your hands. And I was like, wait, none of this makes sense. You need to learn how to feel the emotion.
Yeah, we stomped our feet and boo-hooed.
Okay, good.
I'm
I'm
with you.
glad somebody
It
else
might just be
out
our
there are doing
generation.
it. I don't know. It was so weird where I remember thinking, and I said to my husband, like, is that how you learned the song? Because I don't remember that. He was like, I don't know. He doesn't remember much from his childhood. So
Yeah. No, I remember stomping my feet a lot.
and that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I tell my daughter when she gets really angry, she used to scream. She used to just get into that motion of tribal anger almost, and her tribal brain would take over and she would just let it out. And while I appreciated the fact that she could tap into that, it hurt our ears. And so we taught
Yeah.
her that if she was feeling it to scream into a pillow. And I
Yeah.
didn't care if she needed to let it go, but you also have to be aware of the other people that are around you.
Yeah. I love that. We also do some stuff like shaking and trembling and wiggling, right? Because with somatics, your soma is your body and the emotion goes through. And if you hold it, right, like that's why people have a shoulder higher than the other or a neck tilted or they're storing these things. So imagine if you just feel it in your body and you don't know how to express it verbally or you don't know what to do, like just start wiggling your shoulders back and forth. Just wiggle your spine, just shake your hands out. Anything that you can do that's going to create energy moving through the body
Hmm.
is going to be a release. So I always say I'm certain that I lived through all of this because I was a dancer.
Hmm.
I don't, if I wouldn't have been dancing my whole life, I don't know that I would have gotten off the hospital beds or back into society or removed the depression or the anxiety that I was suffering with. I don't know that that would have been a thing. So
Right.
I am so appreciative of movement and dance and music because if nothing else, I will just look, get on the floor and roll around like a cat, stretch in your bed, make some noise. If you need to sigh or just, you don't have to go full yelling and screaming, but you can move things
Right.
so many ways. There's so many techniques. So most of us again have just been taught to shut that off. Sit down, be quiet, sit still, cross your legs, don't move, don't wiggle,
Right.
right? And so in somatics, one of the first things that we learn is just to like loosen our jaw,
Mhm.
like just let your mouth move. And it's kind of silly, but it's a fun exercise that we do because so many of us have TMJ
Right. And
and
without
jaw.
even realizing it, you don't realize how much stress is all held right there.
Yes, yes. So expression physically, emotionally, through words, through vibration, through movement, I think is such a beautiful gift for the world to have.
Mhm. I love it. I think that everything that you teach is just it's so beautiful in the way that it comes out, and like you said, the energy of it, if you just let it sit and slowly vibrate, it has nowhere to go. But the more you move and the more you get active and the more that's why I mean, maybe not the wiggles, but running for some people works or taking a walk or just getting up and stretching, like you said, rolling around in your bed, anything to get your body moving and to get the energy out because it's just going to sit there and vibrate at a low vibration for you.
Absolutely. I mean, even with what I do all day long, right? I'm working with the trauma body, I'm working with the trauma brain, I'm working with somatics and emotions. I'm sitting on a bouncy ball right now.
Mhm.
Because as I'm working with people, I need to move so that I don't take it in,
Right.
so that I don't become the next storage locker, for pain. And it's like, so I'm always wiggling and moving, and I talk with my hands a lot, and that for me as a practitioner has been something that's super beneficial. I have a yoga trapeze outside, I got a yoga stand over here. And then I got a little ladder to my bunk bed. I go take a nap sometimes if I need one.
That's
but
awesome.
it's really setting yourself up for success. So no matter where you are, no matter what tools you have access to, all you need to know is let it move.
Mhm.
And might just be wiggling your fingers. If that's all you can do, just wiggle your fingers
Yeah. So
and
when you're
feel.
right, feel it definitely. What I know that you said when you work with your clients, you're always bouncing and that's a way that you protect yourself. I know that my friend has a way that she creates sort of an energy bubble around herself. Do you have other techniques that can help, especially if you're there for somebody else who's going through trauma, that you can then say, I'm going to be here and just be the presence to let them feel it, but not then take it on for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Years ago, I had a very brilliant massage therapy teacher, and she taught me a phrase, hollow like a flute. She said, just be hollow like a flute.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
you actually prepare yourself to be hollow like a flute. And what I've learned over the years is I'm extremely sensitive. I'm a highly sensitive person. I've always been that way. Again, one of the things I was taught to shut off as a child, I now believe is a superpower. And I'm very connected with my clients and I see things and I feel things. I'm very intuitive when I work with them. And the most important thing for me is to let them know that while I'm working on them, if they need to move, it's 100% acceptable. If they have a sound, if their body makes noise, if there's gurgling, burping, coughing, all normal. Sometimes people throw up, sometimes like things just happen, right? So giving them first the permission to, if their arm needs to jerk out, let it jerk. You're not going to hit me, you're not going to hurt me, just whatever's happening on this table is yours.
Mhm.
And then the other side of that for me is I let them know I will move and I will breathe a lot. You will hear me breathing
Mhm.
because when you start to hold your breath, I hold my breath and then I'm like,
Right, then you
so
can't
I
breathe.
have to let it out. Right. So, like, because mirror neurons are real and intuition is real, um, I have to move in that space.
Mhm. It reminds me of doula work where before I became a doula, when I had a doula for my surrogate pregnancy, for the first one, in the labor and delivery room, she said to me, without medication, a lot of times people throw up in labor, they make noises that they wouldn't normally make, there's movement that doesn't normally occur. You're sort of out of control of your body, even though you have full control over your body. But
Right.
you're becoming more in tune with what your body needs and you're just letting it be. And I feel like a lot of times in what you're describing, that's the exact case. That if we could learn not necessarily how to control it, but in the right ways to express it and not feel like you're being suppressed, that's all that it is. It's just tapping into that primal part of your brain to say, these feelings are okay. Maybe I can take a few minutes and remove myself from whatever situation I'm in because it's not the appropriate time, right? That's where you're taught to behave. But then you could say, okay, I've taken those 90 seconds. I'm now back and able to rejoin whatever was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great point, right? So in things like orgasms and childbirth, right? Our body knows what to do.
Hmm.
And we like try to like control it or manipulate it or like, oh, that shouldn't have been like that or that should. It's the same thing with emotions,
Hmm.
right? We're sensual beings. Humans have senses, they have sensations. We can see, we can smell, we can hear, we can touch, we can taste. Why not allow those sensations to do their job?
Hmm.
So when you feel that sensation of discomfort, yes, go to the bathroom if you need to. Go in the other room if you need. Look, if you've got a toddler and he's just freaking out and you don't want to lose your shit, go to the other room and take a breath.
Right.
Right? It's you do have permission to do that. But
Right.
we always think I can't do this right now. I don't have time right now. I can't address this right now. But what's actually happening scientifically in the brain is that your mind is still consciously thinking about it nonstop.
Hmm.
So you're emoting emotions, even though you're not doing the thing that you're afraid of or letting
Right.
it move through. And I think if people really understood how much energy and effort it took for your emotions to come through your body and you to stop them and push them away over and over, you would just take that 2 minutes and feel it and be done.
Right. And it's barely 2 minutes. It, like you said,
Yeah.
emotions scientifically run through you in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you just allowed it, by the time you're done, it's less than 2 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I am feeling so frustrated with this. I wish it were different.
Yep.
But the problem is the brain starts giving you evidence, right?
Right.
And then we go into this vicious think feel cycle. And that's where the emotions run rampant.
Right.
So
Right. And then it's, oh my
don't get into
gosh,
that.
what am I going to do? And what is this person going to think of me? And
Yeah.
how am I going to feel? And how am I going to suppress it? And how I just don't want to think about it, forget it. And it becomes that ever never ending cycle.
Yeah. So I think the thoughts are more the problem than the emotions are, the beliefs and the thoughts, right? Because the emotions are just like, I just want to hang out here, move through, be done. And your thoughts are like, but, they
Right.
just keep
Right.
showing you.
And it's so interesting because it really is a way that your brain is trying to protect you because your brain is always there saying, wait, 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 this is dangerous. Hold on. But at the same time, feeling the actual emotion isn't dangerous.
Right. I realize no one has ever died from pain.
Right.
No one's ever died from feeling emotion,
Right.
but we think we will. It's brutal,
Right.
right? So our our brain's magic. It's so smart. It does try to
Totally.
protect us. So thankful for that. But at the same time, like, shh, 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 shh. I'm always like, stop, stop, no, 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 no. Right?
Stop telling me what to do.
We have a little joke in our community that we just cut away, the thoughts. So I see mine like a little thought bubble that comes up with a string, like a blue
Nice.
balloon and a red balloon and a green balloon. And I'm just like, cut it away. That's not real, you know. And eventually I get back into my body and regulate and life goes on,
Right.
but um emotions are real. Sometimes they feel scary. It's completely valid. Um, and you don't have to suffer.
Right.
Like that's what
That
I
was
know.
so that it's actually funny that you use those words because my doula, I have a very, very vivid memory of literally being in training. We were the first training class after COVID started to be on Zoom, and we're sitting all looking at each other in the little tiny picture box. And she says, there's a big difference between pain and suffering. And somebody can be in pain without suffering, and somebody could be suffering without being in pain. And you have to figure out which one it is in order to best help the client.
Hmm. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my final question, because you've given such amazing information, number one is how can people find you?
Mhm. The easiest way to find me is just to get on social media. I'm on all platforms: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those guys, X, all that. Monique the Mind Body Coach
Okay.
is
Well, I'll put all
is what.
those in the show notes.
Yep. Um, I have a website. It's my whole name, MoniqueArnaudDerwin.com. It's a little bit obnoxious, but that's my website. And so yeah, just look me up, Monique the Mind Body Coach. You should find me on any social media platform and send me a message. Let me know that you heard this. Tell me what resonated with you, and let's have a conversation and hang out and connect for sure.
I love that. And number two, my second question is final parting thoughts besides connecting with you and besides hearing what resonated. What would be the number one piece of advice that you have that you haven't already said for anybody who's going through trauma and trying to push through to the other side?
Yeah. Um, the way we heal is by feeling.
Hmm.
Feeling is healing. That's it. Time will change things. It won't make it better. Um, but feeling what you're feeling and giving yourself permission to validate whatever that pain is
Hmm.
will move through, not in a victim mentality, but in a true grace, compassion. I feel you, body. I feel you, brain. I know this is hard. Yes, I miss them. Yes, I miss that. Yes, I'm sad about that. Under grief, there are so many layers. There's usually anger first, and under anger is usually sadness, disappointment, and loss of ideals.
Hmm.
And so just have an awareness that what you're feeling is valid, and giving yourself permission to feel it will soften it.
Yeah.
It's the best word I can use. I'm not going to
Yeah.
say make it go away or stop it or whatever, but it'll soften.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think
if,
part of that also is just finding somebody who can sit with you, whether it's somebody who is there as a therapist or somebody who's there as a friend, but just to allow you the space to feel what you're feeling and not, like you said before, not try and make it feel better and not try and suppress it.
and I think that reflects back with the other side of things that we talked about a little bit earlier is if you are a caretaker or a person who loves someone who is grieving or hurting or experiencing some kind of emotional disconnect, don't try to fix them.
Hmm.
Just sit next to them. You don't have to say words. Just, hey, I'm here. It's safe to feel this. I know it sucks.
Hmm.
I think that's the best way to support people at this point in time is
Hmm.
just to let them know what they are feeling is not wrong.
Right. And that you can feel multiple things all at one time. Right? You can be
Yes.
crying hysterically and then all of a sudden break into extreme laughter because your emotions are going, I don't know what to feel. And something funny that just came into my head needs to come out. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. 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 All good stuff.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the advice and the stories and just the caring nature that you have.
Well, thank you for hosting this platform. Like I said, I know that this topic is tough for some people. So thank you for having a safe space where we can share it. And I really hope that your audience got something that they can take away, some little nugget that they can use to implement in their life a little differently.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today on Pushing Through Loss. I hope this episode has provided support, understanding, and a sense of community. Remember, you are not alone on your journey, and you have the strength to face the challenges that come your way. If you found value in today's conversation, please leave me a review and consider sharing it with others who may benefit. Together, we can help each other heal and activate our inner strength warriors. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations, and until next time, you got this.